So 99% of people are too scared to borrow money to invest in stocks, but they have no problem leveraging themselves 5 to 1, 10 to 1 into a home purchase that just never ends up making them much wealthier. Now, in the past, the math just didn't make sense for stocks. I mean, the numbers made sense, but it just took a very, very long time to see any benefits from leveraging debt to buy stocks, specifically index funds or ETFs. And before leverage index ETFs existed, before Bitcoin existed, before artificially low interest rate environments existed, borrowing cash to grow your stock portfolio to set yourself up for early financial independence was frowned upon. It was discouraged, and the statistical margin of error was small. But times have changed. Today, we'll be discussing why that has changed and why the numbers are in your favor right now, and why I'm taking full advantage. It's never been an easier time to make money online, so hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into today's content. Now, for those of you that don't know who I am, hi, I'm Patrick. I've been an investor for over a decade, an options seller for 7 years, and I've been in crypto for 7 years as well. I've grown my portfolio to over $250,000, and I run a little school community by the same name as this channel. This is the best way to support the channel, so if you want to go check that out, link is in the description below. Now with stocks, if you think about the cost to borrow money from your bank with a personal loan, for example, the interest rate can be as high as 11 to 12% depending on the interest rate environment. So if you invested in indexes like the S&P 500 and averaged 8 to 12% per year, you would be lucky to arbitrage a point or two after interest payments and taxes on any capital gains. But now, the rules have changed. We live in perpetually low interest rate environments because our economies are walking zombies and no one can afford to have these interest rates raised. And we now have access to leverage indexes and Bitcoin to easily outpace the interest payments on borrowing money. A massive arbitrage moment in time. So let's look at some leveraged index funds I love, and of course Bitcoin, and compare their cumulative annual growth rates to the interest payments required to upkeep those loans. Today we are going to look at SSO, UPRO, QLD, TQQQ, and of course Bitcoin, and compare all of their cumulative annual growth rates to how much it would cost to hold a loan borrowed against them. Now, in my neck of the woods, which is Canada, there's a few popular ways in which you can borrow money to invest. You can borrow against your existing stock portfolio for low rates of 3 to 6% currently. You can borrow a personal loan from your bank ranging anywhere from 8 to like 14%, depending on your credit. And you can go balls to the wall and borrow against your real estate with a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, and pays super low interest rates of 2 to 5%, depending, once again, on the interest rate environment. Now, obviously, the lower the interest rates you can get, the better your returns will be. But let's imagine you get a loan somewhere in the middle of all those rates. So let's say 8%, which is fairly high, but for the sake of this video, we'll keep interest rates on the higher end to show that even with higher rates, this method is still very profitable. So our interest rates are 8% on the loans, and let's say we're borrowing $100,000 and we're not paying off the loan, just making interest-only payments monthly. That means we are paying $8,000 a year, or $667 a month in interest to keep this $100,000 loan open. Or in this little experiment, if we held the entire loan for the entire 20-year period that we're investing the money for, you would pay a total of $8,000 per year in interest times 20 years, which is $160,000 in interest. So now that we know what it would cost over the long term to hold the loan, how much money could you potentially make with these stocks or Bitcoin in the same time frame? We're going to hold the investments for 20 years since you need long-term time horizons to see the compounded gains fit the data accurately. So here are the numbers. First up, SSO, the 2 times leveraged S&P 500 fund, has had a cumulative annual growth rate since inception of just over 15%. Now, with an 8% interest rate on a $100,000 loan, we're paying $8,000 a year, but making $15,000 that first year on average, maybe $14,800 after management fees. So in the first year already, you can see almost double the return of the loan repayment. Now, obviously, we are not making a steady 15% every single year here. We just average out to 15% a year. But remember, with leverage index ETFs, you will see 50% years and also negative 40% years. But it all will average out to this cumulative annual growth rate of the fund. So with every dollar we pay in interest here, we make $1.88 in that first year on average. A decent arbitrage. And that multiplier is just the first year. After that, it compounds even more and more and more and more. Because remember, your loan amount stays the same, your investment grows and compounds. So remember that when we look at this arbitrage multiplier number here, this is most likely the lowest it's ever going to be in the lifetime of this investment and the loan. This is just for the first year, and it gets bigger from here. It improves the longer you hold in a compound. And if the cumulative annual growth rate stayed the same into the future, we would see a $100,000 investment in SSO turn into $1.6 million. For my conservative investors watching this video, you could literally stop right here, just outperform the S&P by a couple percentage points and retire 5 to 10 years earlier than you expected to, where you hold normal unleveraged index funds. Next, we have UPRO, the 3 times leveraged S&P 500 ETF, where we had a cumulative annual growth rate since inception of 33%. Staggering number. Yes, if you held this fund since inception in 2009, you'd be making 33% per year up until this point, outperforming the S&P by 3.5 times on average every year. Paying 8% on a loan and making 33% on it is like saying for every dollar of interest you pay, you're making $4.12. Sounds crazy when you put it that way, and it shows how wide the arbitrage is. And that's just on average in the first year of the investment. That's not considering any compounding of the investment yet. I mean, you could drive a truck through that spread, through that arbitrage. Pay 8% per year to make 33% per year on average. No brainer. And it's not like this fund has only been around since COVID or something. It's been around for 16 years. A $100,000 investment here would turn into just under $30 million in 20 years. Next, we have QLD, which is the 2 times leveraged NASDAQ, which saw a cumulative annual growth rate of 25% since inception in 2006. So almost 20 years. That means for every dollar spent in interest payments in the first year, you're making $3.12 with this one. In the first year on average, pretty good arbitrage if you ask me. Here, a $100,000 investment would turn into $8.6 million. And lastly, from the leverage index ETFs, my favorite, TQQQ, the 3 times leveraged NASDAQ. This one is a monster. Since inception in 2010, the TQQQ has done 43% cumulative annual growth rate. That means for every dollar spent on interest payments, you're making $5.37 in the first year on average. Like, how is no one talking about this? This isn't data extrapolated from 2 or 3 years of data. This is 15 plus years of modern stock market data. A pretty reliable set, I would say. Like, I'm not making up stupid cumulative annual growth rate numbers here and just pulling them out of a hat. These are real numbers produced by real funds that have existed for more than 15 years. Now, granted, with a high cumulative annual growth rate like this, you can expect some very severe drawdowns in between. TQQQ has seen many periods where it falls 80, 95% from the all-time high before it shoots back up to new all-time highs. But with that caveat out of the way, investing $100,000 here, cumulative annual growth rate staying stable, you would turn $100,000 into $128 million in 20 years. And last but not least, Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin early on in its early days had a stupid cumulative annual growth rate of like 150%. Now, that's obviously not the case as adoption grows more and more every year and Bitcoin becomes more stable and less volatile. If we just took the last 10 years of activity, however, Bitcoin has had a cumulative annual growth rate of approximately 59%. That means for every dollar of interest you pay on a loan, and all of it is invested into Bitcoin, you are essentially making $7.37 in that first year on average, the largest arbitrage on this list, which is why I primarily borrow cash from banks and brokerages to buy Bitcoin. Once my Bitcoin ETF position becomes big enough, I do want to start diversifying it back into the leverage index ETFs like UPRO and opportunistically into TQQQ. But for now, we let the IBET ETF position grow, take advantage of the massive arbitrage at these low interest rates. And in my opinion, these interest rates are only going to continue to drop in the foreseeable future. So it makes our investment that much more profitable. Now I'm going to sandbag this number even more because, like I said earlier, that cumulative annual growth rate will continue to decline as Bitcoin becomes more adopted asset class and grows in size. So let's sandbag the number down to 46%. So let's take 13% off the cumulative annual growth rate of the last 10 years. So after 20 years, your $100,000 investment at a 46% cumulative annual growth rate would be approximately $193 million. Borrowing money to invest can be a highly contested topic, especially when you talk to people about leveraged products, leverage ETFs. Everyone talks about volatility decay and how you're just going to lose money holding leverage indexes for the long term. These numbers say otherwise. A lot of the conservative investors will say it's unnecessary risk you're taking on. Why not just grow your money at 8 to 10% per year and be stress-free? Well, because this channel is not built on trying to retire in 40 years. It's to try and retire while my brain still functions and I'm physically mobile so that we can enjoy the fruits of our investments while we're young and not when we're approaching death's doorstep. Don't get me wrong, this process is stressful and can be very risky, but deep down, no one, and I mean no one, wants to work for 50 years to just spend the final 10 in hospitals and doctors' offices. You know, get rich or die trying type of energy, you know what I mean? This channel is to document my journey of early financial independence and to show you what it takes to get there. So I hope you find this type of content useful. Let me know down in the comments what other type of content you'd be interested in seeing. And if you're on your own FIRE journey, let's discuss it down below. I love brainstorming about this stuff. Now, if you have stuck around this long, go ahead and catch another one of my videos right over here, or check out my channel over here, where you can take a look at all the other content I have to offer about investing and my personal investing journey. That's all for me today. I'm Patrick with Apex Wealth Collective. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.